Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Brian, your host of the Perish the Thought Show. The opinions of said host and our guests have not been sanitized or scientifically tested, so please consume at your own risk. Ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is listening, welcome back to the show. In 2015, my next guest, author and speaker Portia Louder, was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for money laundering and mortgage fraud. After 2 years of blaming everyone for her incarceration, she finally had the courage to own it all, took full responsibility, and became a spiritually free woman while remaining behind bars and serving another 3 years of that 7-year sentence. Sit back and ride along this journey from the pit of despair to a beautiful and full life of love, honesty, and friendship in and out of the system. Portia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You have a hell of a story.
I think I do. Yeah.
You've got a story. There was a guy used to do the series on, and maybe we talked about this, called Story Trek on BYU TV.
Yep.
Well, now he's doing that again, and it's called You Got a Story. So you got a story.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Tell me how. Let's just start from wherever the beginning looks like for this sake of this discussion.
Yeah.
What decisions led up to it? Of you getting incarcerated? What that was like? The coming out? All that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to shut up now.
Okay. Don't do that. No. I'm going to just do a really like a 5-minute leading up to, because I think it's useful to understand. Before I was a felon or got involved in the legal system, I had a pretty rough start. Even as a young girl, I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I dropped out of high school when I was 17, had my first child. So when looking back at myself, I can see, I just didn't know who I was. I didn't know my worth and had a hard time with that. And even though my parents were LDS, I had no interest in the religion. And it really took me getting beat up pretty good. I had 2 kids, was a single mom, went through giving a child up for adoption, and then became addicted to drugs. And so this all took place. And by the time I was 25, and at 25, that's when I hit a bottom and reached out for help. And I actually went to an LDS bishop, even though I hadn't been going to church or anything, because I didn't know where to turn and I was desperate. And so I found recovery, and I'm so grateful for that in my life because it served me well. It doesn't mean that I haven't made some big mistakes, because we're going to talk about that. But at that point in my life, I came to understand the value of living a more principle-centered life, like how being honest and admitting your mistakes, serving others, trying to make amends for the mistakes that you've made, taking a solid inventory. Those are all the 12 steps of either AA, NA, or the church now has a 12-step program. And so I really walked away from the people and the things that I was doing. It was what I thought would be the hardest thing I would ever do in my life. And I started to go to church and got involved in this program, and I got sober and met my husband, Chad, who is just a great guy. And we went to the temple. And I can tell you that, when someone like me, who has not been active in the church and who's been addicted to drugs and struggling in all these other areas, I would say even before drugs, it was relationships, thinking that I had to have a man in my life to make me whole, goes to the temple. It's a big deal for me. It seemed like, that was something I couldn't really do. And so it was pretty awesome for me. And I was humble, which is such a great thing to be. And I'm not as good at it as I wish I was, but at that point I was. And so,
could I stop you for a second?
Yeah, jump in.
You said, the thought of you going to the temple, you didn't think that would be for someone like you. Why? What was it that you didn't feel?
Well, even at a young age, I remember feeling like I didn't fit in with the church. Like it just seemed like there was them and me, which I know isn't true. And actually, I still think me trying to fit some kind of a mold isn't the answer. Just me being truly authentic to myself and keeping those principles and commandments and having a relationship with Heavenly Father is the way it has to work for me. So in other words, I can't get up in sacrament and bear my testimony and say, you know, I've done all these things right. I have to just get up and be honest and say, you know what? I'm a total screw up. Like I have to get up and say, I really struggle. And I have to talk about the hard things I've been through because if I don't feel connected to anyone. And then I think everybody else in the church has it together and I'm the only screw up. Because that's how I felt. Like I really did. I just thought there's like a different group of people that know how to do things right. And I'm just not one of them. And so that was part of it. And then the other thing, with my addiction and then I had been in and out of relationships. I was a single mother, had all these children. I mean, I had two as a single mom, plus one I gave up for adoption. So all this trauma and all these things that didn't really fit in the LDS box, at least the way I saw it. But I went to the temple, I got worthy and I went, and it was life changing and it was beautiful. But I think I was still trying to fit in the box. I didn't talk about my past at that point. I started to build my own business. My husband and I went to church and did all the things, but I didn't talk about the fact that I was recovering from an addiction, that I was going to 12-step meetings. And I didn't talk about the fact that I'd been married before and divorced and, had given a child up for adoption. I never talked about that to anybody. It was like, those are things you just pretend didn't happen. And it took, I don't know, I was sober 4.5 years. We were building this life together. And then after I had our second child together, Chad and I, so I have four now, I relapsed. I had a back surgery and they prescribed prescription drugs. And what I know about myself now is I can't take those at all. Some people will say, oh, can't you just take an Ambien or an Adderall? None of it. I can't take any kind of prescription drugs because I'm an addict. And I don't, I'm not willing to give up the freedom that I have in my life from sobriety for that. But at that point in time, my life was busy and I was in denial and I just kept using these prescription drugs. And I remember thinking like, you know, I just, I guess I thought my life is so busy and chaotic. I had nannies at that point taking care of my kids. My business, my photography by Portia business, grew to 200 weddings a year. So I have like employees, and I'm taking pictures from sun up to sundown, and then I'm editing. And back then it was negatives, and then digital, and it was just a lot traveling, and so real estate popped up, and I thought, that was going to be my ticket out. Like I could work less if I could make more money and pay off my house, or I don't know. Anyway,
Those are worthy goals.
they are, but like, I mean, as I came to know later that to trade time for money in that way, like what really is so valuable is your time and your experiences in life. So here I am trying to make more money so I can spend more time with my kids when we could have had less and I could have spent time with my kids, right? Like I never needed that much money. I never needed a fancier, I mean, I built a new home and none of that stuff. I didn't need a fancier car. I didn't need more clothes. None of that meant anything to me later when I went to prison. The only thing that mattered to me was the time I missed, like the little experiences of driving your kid to school, which I could have done always. And I chose to hire people to do that so that I could go work and make more money. So it was just like I was trading everything of value for something completely worthless, which is money. At that, I mean, later on, I came to see that wasn't something I was going to take with me. It didn't define me, and it really didn't make my life any better. But so I see this about myself now. It's not just prescription or drugs, because I've used illegal drugs too. It is also hustling. I like to hustle. Like I know this about myself now, and I like to do them both at the same time. So when I start to use the drugs and my judgment gets off, then it's like, oh, and I want to go do that deal because it's a rush to do that deal, and I want to make more, and I'm going to prove myself and be better, and when really everything important is inside of me. Like nothing external is going to make me feel more whole. It's, distracts from that.
Did the drugs make you hustle better or just give you
It just made me really grandiose. Yeah, like a
Like,
false sense of
I can
confidence.
do
And they
anything.
numb out your judgment. So, like your moral compass. Now, for me, like when I first started in real estate, I started flipping lots, and that's not illegal, like to buy a lot and flip it for more, right? And then I decided to, well, if I can make that kind of money, I'm going to build a spec home. So I bought a couple lots and started these construction deals to sell because everything's moving so fast. And then I decided I might as well like put a whole neighborhood under contract. I mean, that's the thinking. So I've got like 15 lots now under contract in hard money loans. So I'm paying these big interest payments. So construction loans are harder to close than just a flip loan. So now I've got all these payments going out and I'm not flipping lots fast enough to cover the payments. So somebody introduces me to an equity deal, which means you buy the house for $1 million, you get a $2 million appraisal, you get a loan for $1.5 million, and then you pull 500 cash out for yourself, and then you reinvest it in something else. And I remember seeing people do it and talking about it and even advertising it. And I remember my gut saying, why would you ever do that? Why would you borrow more money? It doesn't make sense. And I remember somebody introducing him and thinking I would never do that. And then I'm doing tons of them pretty soon. Like I just kept on keeping on. So I clearly knew, but I just did it anyway.
From the time you realized that you thought this is fishy
Uh-huh.
till you did it, how long was that time frame?
Probably 3 months. Like I think desperation set in. Like I probably made 3 months worth of interest payments at 50 grand a month on a a subdivision of lots. And then these deals became more appealing because I could make my interest payments. And as soon as the construction loans came through, I would make so much money I could pay. It's just a real estate Ponzi scheme. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it is, but it didn't seem like that. But you can sell yourself anything.
Yeah.
You can tell,
Justification.
yeah, totally. So, and I remember feeling crappy about it, like but I would always justify to it. It's like, well, I'm not like faking loan apps. I'm not like faking pay stubs. Like there's always someone worse, right? Those people are the fraudsters. I'm not. Like I'm fine. I'm in the middle, or I'm not.
I can quit
And
anytime.
yeah, I could quit anytime. Yeah. Yeah. And but no, my addiction got worse because I mean, now I've got the heaviness of all this stuff going on in my life. And my marriage isn't going great because my husband hates all this and he doesn't know what to do because I'm crazy. Like he knows, he's like, I can't stop her. She's going to do what she's going to do. And, and then I feel like I'm deficient in all these other areas as a parent. So I'm buying my kids things and I'm spending money and you know, I'm trying to make up for what I'm not doing and it's in the worst possible way. And, I remember thinking like, I wish I just had cancer, which I know sounds so bad. That would be an honorable way to just to get out of all of this. I put myself in such a terrible situation. And when the FBI showed up, like I started hearing I was under investigation. And all that did is make me mad because I thought, well, there was another Portia doing real estate, which is so unusual. It's an unusual name. But I had heard that I'd been banned from certain title companies. And I was like, why? And I heard, well, they think you're this Portia and the FBI is investigating her. And in the end, I just knew what I was doing was wrong and it made me mad and it scared me. And instead of just saying, you know what, I need to stop. Like this is not okay. I don't feel good about it. If people are questioning my integrity or just my integrity is not right, I need to get it right. Like any of those things would have been a much better choice than the choice I made, which was to deny it, pretend like it wasn't happening, throw a fit, hire lawyers. I handled it as bad as you could and I drug it out. And it didn't go away. It only got worse. I could have gotten 2 years in prison, but that seemed impossible to me. Like I'm like, I can't go to prison. If I go to prison, my life is over as I
That's
know
for
it.
other people, not me.
Yeah, I'm a good person. In my mind, I'm like and the other thing I thought is people in prison are bad. It's a really bad thing. If you go to prison, you're bad and there's no coming back from that. Like I mean, I've already come back from being a single mom and addicted to drugs and I'm using at this point. So my judgment's just terrible. I remember thinking, I gotta get sober. Even telling my lawyer at that point, I was like, I can't. He kept telling me, well, I I found lawyers to tell me I wasn't guilty, right? Like you can always find a lawyer and pay them whatever because I had lawyers that said you're going to do a couple of years, but I got rid of those lawyers.
Of
So,
course.
yeah. But I brought this lawyer on and he said, I don't think you're guilty. He's like, what you did isn't that big of a deal. In fact, I remember saying, no, actually, I did do some things wrong. He goes, oh, that little snafu, that's not that big of a deal. I'm like, here's some more money, But yeah, so, eventually I just, I made it worse for myself and ended up having to walk into a federal courthouse anyway, which was a shocking experience because of the denial that I had put myself, I'd been denying this and fighting it for so long. And the reality of my situation was serious. I was facing 0 to 7 years and I knew when I walked in, the judge is going to give me 7. And it was just such a shock that I had put myself and my family in such a terrible situation. I think everyone that goes into a courtroom has that moment of clarity that's very painful and also can be a transforming experience if you allow it to. Or you can get angry, you could be angry and think that I was done dirty, which I did do for a while, but it still was it was just an awakening. The reality of my situation was really
So
painful.
why did you feel like you were done dirty?
Everyone feels that way when they go to
Just a common thing.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, it's so easy to look at. Like, what about all the people that did worse things that got away with it, right? Or I the banks got away with it. They're dirty. They were way more corrupt. They weren't even coming for the banks. They wanted the little guys like me. Or what about my neighbor that was out doing these deals and the feds didn't even talk to him? Or just because my name's Portia and another Portia gets hit, I'm a mother with kids. What about I'm willing to stay home and work to pay this debt? Nope, you want to put me in prison. Like all those things can pop into your head. Or the feds are just as dirty. They pulled all kinds of dirty tricks. Like when they're investigating me, they did this and this and this, and they lied. I mean, it's so easy to find fault. And when you're in that situation, you will make any excuse because it's so scary. And I've thought often if I could go back and do it again, I'd just own it right away so I could find the power to move forward. But I had a dream a while ago that I was in that horrible situation, the part leading up to it. And I remember that terrible fear that I had. And I thought, even knowing everything I know, I don't think I could do it any different. It was so scary, that felt like I was fighting for my life. And I didn't trust them. So why am I going to say, yes, I did it? I'm going to sit and deny it. And then when they hit me with a lengthy sentence, I mean, why did I get 7 years? They could have given me 2 years. Were they just trying to make an example of me? Like all those things pop through your mind. And they're not wrong, but they're very weak. It's just not the powerful way to move forward in your life. It doesn't matter if other people did worse things. It doesn't matter that they didn't, the banks got away with it. It's my integrity that I need to fix. It's me taking ownership so that I can have the power to move forward. It's me that needs to make things right with my kids. It's me that I don't care about everyone else's integrity. My integrity, I want it to be right. And the only way to make it right is to acknowledge and admit my mistakes so I can move forward. But I didn't know that when I was going through all this. It took a while to figure that out. So,
Well, that's an interesting. I remember in your book you had to deliver yourself. That's an interesting.
oh
I
yeah,
bet that was
yeah.
an interesting ride.
The
Because you had to take
self-surrender. Yeah.
self surrender. I
Yeah.
didn't know that was a thing. I thought once you're
Yeah.
convicted and
Yeah.
huff cuff and away you go. But clearly, I don't know.
Well, that depends on the person and the crime. Like, um, I didn't realize this, but I came to find out that actually was very privileged in terms of my whole experience. Like for me, it seemed horrible, but in comparison to a lot of other people who don't have a husband, who didn't have a paid lawyer, who didn't have, women that get pulled off the street, they're not going to see the light of day. They're going to sit there in a holding cell. They're going to wait until they can get them in front of the courtroom. They're going to go right to prison and they're not going to see their kids and they're not going to have any time to clean up anything in their life. So here I am complaining and whining, but in actuality, my situation's much better than most. So I didn't realize that,
A
but yeah.
privileged prisoner. That's an
Oh, I was.
interesting.
Yeah, I totally was.
That's just a kind of a contradiction in terms.
Yeah. No.
But so
Yeah.
how long, I mean, because you said you were still in denial, how long in did you just go, yeah, this is all me?
2 years.
2 years of that.
Yeah, 2 years of setting around me with other. I mean, there's the whole shock. The first year was just denial. Oh, I'm not going to do this time. There's no way. Someone's going to get me out. They're not going to make, I'm not going to do this. It's not happening. So I'm still in denial. I've been in denial. I go in the courtroom. I have this realization of what I've done. And then I go to prison and I'm devastated. I'm in so much pain. I think I can't do this. Right. Well, the way out immediately is denial. You don't want to suffer like that. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to do this time. Nah. I mean, I had like a lot of praying and a lot of, seeking help and determination to do something different. But really, it did take a long time of sitting around and talking about how screwed up the system is and how rotten I had a blog and I would write all the things the prison would do wrong on my blog and then post it online. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting that they allowed you access because I know my young friend, he has no access to the outside world
Yeah.
digitally at all
It
unless they
depends.
grant him
Well, he's in
email.
state, federal
He's in federal.
prison.
Well, he was in state. He's in federal now, and he's been cut
Yeah.
off again.
Yeah. Well, then he's acting a fool, to be honest.
That's There's a guy in my ward, ironically enough, who used to work at near the prison where he's at, and he's like, yeah, they don't just do that to be assholes. They do that.
No.
They're trying to
Yeah,
control.
absolutely not.
Is there something going
No.
on?
Yeah. And I mean, okay, it's a prison. Like the environment's not perfect. They don't send all the good people there that never did anything wrong. I mean, it's a tough environment. There's people in there that have screwed up that are there for a reason that need to be there. And there's some people that probably did get a little bit of a raw deal or a big raw deal. There's officers there that are doing their best, that are just people that are trying to do the best they can, but they have a job to do, And so at first, all I did is set and focus on everything they were doing wrong. I did have access to the outside world through email. I would send, stuff to my husband and he would post it. But that didn't get me anywhere because I'm not focusing on myself. I mean, all that is just a tactic to try to look outside yourself and blame everybody else. There's no power in that. There's no growth or moving forward that way. As long as you're complaining about everything else, you don't have any control over that. It's you that you can control and change. And as soon as you're willing to look at yourself and do the work, that's where you're going to grow. That's where but it took me a year and then they shipped me to Wasika. And I think when I
And
got to Minnesota,
where's that
in
again?
Minnesota,
Minnesota.
in
Okay.
Minnesota.
Sounds very
So that was,
Minnesota-ish.
yeah. And it was a really pretty compound for a prison. Um, they had green grass and Minnesota's cold in the winter, but beautiful in the summer. We didn't have AC, so it was hot in the summer. Um, but I loved being outside I think I spent like 6 months just crying because I had hurt my family. I had left my husband in such a terrible situation financially. The reality of my situation started to kick in. And I felt really close to God. It's strange, but like never did I feel any closer. I would sit in nature and I would feel so loved and connected and so much pain because of the reality of what I had done. But I walked through that pain. I mean, I remember my roommate saying, you were hurting. Like I could see your pain every time you walked in. I would sit outside until they tell us we had to come get counted. And then I'd go right back outside and I would just cry and beg God to take care of my kids, to make things right. And I think the reality of what I'd done started to kick in, but I still wasn't ready to take full ownership of it because it was too painful. Like all I'm doing now is accepting that I've done this. And that's really painful. Like, how do you say, this happened and it was me? I still wasn't ready to say it was 100% me. I think looking back at it now, it makes me laugh because I was like, I would think about all the things the government did wrong. And one day it occurred to me that they were probably never going to come and apologize. Like that wasn't going to happen. I was going to be waiting a long time for that apology. And that's when I started to think, I got to find my way out of here. Like I got to find my way out. I can't feel this. Like I just felt so victimized and it made me feel weak and very imprisoned. And I wanted to be free. And so I started looking and I would watch the people that were like myself, white collar, smart people that would sit around and talk about all their theories as to why they were innocent and the government had done them dirty. Now you're thinking, smart people, why are they doing that? I don't know, but that's what we did. We just spent hours doing it. But the ones that came in, like the girls that came in that didn't have any privilege, that didn't have lawyers, paid lawyers, they're like, I'm a drug dealer. Of course I'm going to prison. That's what happens to drug dealers, And I was like, wait, like they were able to move forward. And I saw me and my friends as stuck. And I'm like, I want to move forward. So I started to just really work at that. And I'm telling you, the most freedom I've ever felt was when I made that list. It was so cool because I made this spreadsheet. It was every ugly thing I'd ever done in categories. You would think that's not a cool thing to do, but you'd be amazed at how, when you really get honest and you kind of eliminate the judgment, you write out your life, you become more objective about it. Like you can truly let go of a lot of that stuff. And then owning it, I said it out loud. I wrote letters to people and asked for their forgiveness. I remember telling my children, this is 100% my fault. Very painful. My daughter told me she didn't want to talk to me again, and it took her 2 years to talk to me again. She had every right to be upset and hurt, but we were building a new life based on truth, and that is the only way to do it. But yet we avoid, I think as human beings, we avoid that because it's so painful to acknowledge and it's scary, but yet it's the way forward. It's where the power lies. So
When you said, you left your husband in kind of a mess, what did the damage to your family, what did that look like?
Oh, it was awful. I mean, this went on for a long time. So I spent all of our retirement, I spent every dime we had fighting bankruptcy. We didn't have a home or anything. When I went to prison, a neighbor reached out and offered to let him move into their basement, and he paid a minimal amount of rent. So he has 3 kids at home, 2 that are out of the house, and he didn't have a job. Like they didn't, I mean, he just got drugged through it with my case big time. They indicted Chad too on a conspiracy charge. He didn't do time, but he couldn't go back to work at the same job he had. He had to start completely over. So that was really hard for me to accept that I had done that. Like, whoa. The reality of, I mean, when you're in the thick of doing it, you're just going, 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 but then all of a sudden everything slows down and I'm sitting here, no distractions. And I realize what I've done and how it's affecting him. They couldn't just fly out and see me. They didn't have the money to do that. I remember my kids coming out to see me and my daughter saying, and Jackson looking at Sadie and saying, we don't have the money to just go out and eat, Sadie. We're just here. You just act like we're so rich and we have the money to do that. We don't. And he was working 2 jobs to have this beater car just so that that's what Jackson was doing. And Chad's working, trying to take care of kids. And Sadie goes, I'm not trying to say that we have to go somewhere nice. I was just asking if we could stop on our way. And I'm sitting there going, what have I done to my family? And Sadie, and I'm thinking, my kids live in Highland, Utah. None of their neighbors, they all are very wealthy. They're living in the basement of someone's home, which we're grateful for. They don't have enough. I mean, somebody donated the tickets for my family to come out and see me and the hotel, and they don't even have money to stop and get fast food. And I'm sitting in here for free and they're making my food. I mean, it's crappy food and I would way rather be with them, but like I was helpless. I couldn't try to fix it. And it was real, and watching them. Now, I honestly believe that my children gained so much from this experience. Like my son Jackson is totally independent, works hard, has a good job. Like my kids learned things that they wouldn't have learned. But watching them go through it because of my choices was really painful. And that's the kind of pain that makes you want to deny it and be pissed off at the government and everybody else but yourself because it hurts so deeply.
So you and your husband worked together in the real estate?
No, it
Oh,
was me doing the real estate, but I
oh,
had him quit his job and stay home with the kids
okay.
at a certain point. I mean, he had his own career, but it was like, I've got a photography business and a real estate. I'll make the money. So he stayed home for a while and then,
Put that man in his place.
yeah, so
Yeah,
awesome.
I
And
get you.
then, I mean, he was mad with good reason. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he made bad choices too, and he knows that, but at that point, when the feds came in and started investigating me, if I would have pled, they wouldn't have charged Chad. I mean, they pretty much told me that. They're like, he needs to decide which side he's on. And then they, I could have, my belligerence added to the whole thing and made it worse. So, I mean, he has a real reason to be angry at me, right? But he chose a different path, and I have so much admiration for him because he chose a different path. He chose to love me and support me and to honor me to our children. Just say he allowed them to feel how they felt and to be angry, but he's like, we love her and we're gonna get through this as a family together. And so that's something that I really admire in Chad, because I don't know if I could have done it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
amazed at him,
You had every reason to just say,
Oh,
done. I'm out.
everyone
Up
asked
and
him, like,
out.
you're gonna stay, your family, everyone's just like, you're staying? What are you thinking? And he did. Yeah.
How, like friends that you had, what are those what happened to those relationships, and are those people still friends, or did you have to come out and rebuild everything again, or
You know, I didn't think that I even wanted to look back. It was like, this was such an awful time. I just want to go forward. I came home. I knew I didn't want to start my own photography business right away because it seemed like that was a trigger back to real, just all of it, the fast living. I knew after being in prison that I didn't care about money, that I wanted to, I built this connection with others and saw the world from such a different place. I saw the strength of these women that were struggling in ways I couldn't even comprehend before going to prison, and saw my purpose so different in this experience. And so I came home, and at first the government said, you've got to make more money. You're good at making money. So they told me I had to get a job making a certain amount. So I went to work as a photographer. And then once I got out of,
afterwards they told you had to make a certain amount of money?
yeah, I mean, I
Wow.
was in the custody of the halfway house. So, like,
Oh,
your case manager can say, you have to bring it. They just, well, I tried to get a job working at a homeless shelter. They're like, nope, you can make a lot more than that. So they set the standard at go work as a photographer, making more money. So I did. And then as soon as I was out of their custody, my probation's been awesome. I went to work at a treatment center, and I started out just support staff, and I've worked my way up into that. But I say that because I just kind of started this new life, but I also have gone back and connected with old friends, and that's been amazing. I just started another photography business. It's not going to be near as busy, but I mean, I work with people with drug problems all day long, and it's not that I don't totally love them, but I also want to do something a little bit different, like creative and beautiful, and you know, so I'm trying to branch out again. But I mean, when I got home and I started working at this treatment center, um, I felt like my heart was so full. Like, I had all this love for these women, and my whole life had changed. And that's when I started writing my book. Like, I would tell these women prison stories, and they loved them. They would laugh, and so I worked a couple grave shifts a week, and I would put them all to sleep, and then I'd go in there and write an outline. And I had blogs and letters, and so I started organizing the content, and I would write a chapter and then send it in to my friends in prison, and they would read it and they loved it. They're like, it's our story, we love it. So I didn't know why. I mean, I had a lot of people say you should write a book, and I thought, really? Because I'm not a college educated author, or like, I'm not a writer. I don't, but I also am really passionate, and I'm a great reader, and I studied a lot in prison, and I've owned my own business, so I just started doing it and learning about it. And I think it was just me wanting to document these experiences. My heart was full. I also, because I saw a human side of people, it was so different than I thought before I went to prison. Like, what prison was like, these experiences, these people, it was so different. And I wanted to share that story. There's lots of people that share the story of, how rotten it is and how mean people are and the fights that happen and how bad the food is. And I'm like, that story's been told, but nobody talks about the tenderness and the kindness and the strength it takes to rise above generations of hardship and the safety, even. There's a lot of people safer in prison than they are out here because of families' challenges and things. So I just started writing my story, and that is why I wrote Living Louder. And then I looked at possibilities of publishing. I self-published. I could have gone a different route, but it was because I'm stubborn and I'm like, I'm going to own my own story. Nobody's going to own it. I'm going to do it my way, I got editors and other people involved. And yeah, I did that. It'll be 2 years in October that I'll have published that. And that's been great because it's available in prisons for free on all the tablets in prisons right now. State prisons, feds don't have tablets, but and a lot of county jails. And I do quite a bit of speaking about my experiences, both in prisons and detention centers and firesides and the MTC. And I get calls for all different events and I share those experiences. And yeah.
It may not be a perfect story, but it's your story and it's real.
Oh, it's definitely not perfect. And it's still being written, but
to me, that is perfect. Because every house has a story. Every person has a story.
Thank you.
So, especially in our culture, how we define perfect is caused a lot of problems.
Right. No, it was for me. One of the beautiful things about going to prison is that it's almost like, who cares now? I don't care what anyone thinks. I mean, once you've been through this, it's like a death and you're just free a little bit, And so you could come out. When I got out, I thought, I wonder if people are going to be excited. I think the world's going to be so excited, And then I was surprised that people kind of wanted to pretend like it never happened. And I was like, are you crazy? Like my whole life changed, You go on a mission, you come home, people celebrate. I'm expecting a party. Like, let's celebrate,
You did a hell of a mission.
Yeah, it was 4 years. It wasn't 2. I doubled up. Let's celebrate. So, I just started talking about it and I felt like I can try to make you feel comfortable or I can be comfortable. And at the end of the day, I got to just be okay with me. So I just share my truth. And if it offends people, I don't want to be offensive, but yeah, it works for me. So
usually people aren't. It's people choosing to be offended that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard a talk show host years ago says, hang a lantern on your faults and then nobody can use those against you.
I love that.
Just put it out there and then they can't come back to you. Oh, I found this dirt about you.
Oh, I love it.
He's like, hey, I'm a scumbag. In fact, he says, it was Glenn Beck.
Oh, yeah. I know.
I'm a recovering alcoholic DJ.
Yeah.
What do you got? Okay. I was a scumbag. And he just puts it out there.
Right.
Which makes sense because then it can't be used as a weapon against you.
Yeah, no, I remember this guy came to our prison and he spoke and he said, when I first went to get a job, he said, I was sitting there looking at the guy that's interviewing me and he pulls up my rap sheet and he goes, wow. He goes, Mr. So-and-so, it looks like you got a lot of pretty serious things on your rap sheet. And he goes, oh, that's not even half of it. It's way worse than that. And he said the guy gave him the job just because he's like, are you kidding me? I think that there's something to that.
So how does that work now? And I asked this not to say, hey, I know what you went through because I was arrested once in college for a traffic ticket that I paid and it was never recorded that I paid. So there was a warrant out for my arrest. So I spent the night in jail.
Ooh.
So at the end, and then I had to go to a judge and say, here's the mess. And then I said, well, what office do I go to get my reputation back? And when someone asks if you ever been arrested, do you say no and have them find out? Or you just say yes, but because all they're going to hear is the yes.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting.
Yours and mine's different. Mine was on the 10 o'clock news.
Yeah. Yours is big. You go big or go home. But how does that work now? Does it follow you? Like if you did want to get a job somewhere,
I can get a job. I think that, I remember writing this post on Facebook that said, I spent 4.5 years in federal prison and I deserve to be there. And this guy commented and he goes, you might be the most honest person I've seen on social media. He goes, man, you're the kind of person everybody should want to hire. And I think that if you just face things so straightforwardly, whether, now if you got a dang traffic ticket and spend a night in jail, I probably wouldn't even waste my time talking about that. Other than if you learn something that brings value. I learned a lot that brings value. So I feel like my experience actually makes me more valuable as an employee. My integrity, being on time, all the things that I learned that I've incorporated. And the cool thing about it is I don't have to sell that. I just am that. And good jobs show up in my life because I bring value. So I know that about myself. And that's why I tell people who are in prison, I have seen people get out and do amazing things because they did the work. They went to prison, they did the work, they changed their life, and they are extremely valuable, and people see it and know it and hire them, and they progress through. Yeah, probably if you got a child crime, you're never going to work at a daycare. I mean, let's get honest. Like, not, I'm never going to do real estate. I don't want to be, I even got an offer from a bank once. I was like, why would you want to hire me? I don't want to work at a bank. I mean, I would be doing spreadsheets and marketing and kind of project management. It was this different kind of a bank, but I'm like, I don't even want to do that. Like, that's not interesting to me at all. But I feel like if you do the work and you become the person, that the right things will show up in your life. And you can't fake it, just be about it. And that's what I tell people in prison all the time when I talk to them is I'm like, man, you guys have this amazing opportunity to become the best version of yourself. And that person, when they leave prison, will get a job, will get a house. Well, things will just fall into place for you. And I've seen it happen over and over. But if you sit there and say, the system's all broken, nobody's going to give me a shot, I'm like, you must not know who you are, because
Mhm.
who cares about the system? I don't give any power to the system. I got out, I did the work, I had the time, and I'm a better version of me. And I haven't had a problem getting a job, not once. I have lots of options. So
That's interesting. I wonder if it's the same for guys. I guess maybe it is if they own it like you've done it.
yeah, I know some
Because I think
amazing
of,
men.
I don't ever think about a woman coming out of prison as being like, ooh, scary. But I think of guys coming out of prison as, ooh, scary. I don't know
Nah.
why. Maybe it's
Yeah,
because it's portrayed wrong.
I have so many friends on LinkedIn that are men that are doing amazing work that got out of prison. I think it's more common for men. I think women face disadvantages, they're not disadvantages, but because we're mothers and a lot of times we don't have that support when we get out. It's like we're trying to, get our kids back or there's just a different challenges women face. So I don't see a lot of women leaders in this space that get out and they're like fighting for, I don't call what I do criminal justice reform. I'm just humanizing the system because when you know people and you know their stories and they're human, you can't lock them up for 20 years or 30 years. Your conscience won't let you because could you lock me up for 20 or 30 years? No. But if you didn't know me and know my story and I'm not human and a judge said all these horrible things about me, yeah, you're going to throw away the key. So I tell stories about human beings and I think that it's an awakening for normal people that haven't had anything to do with the justice system. Like, whoa, seems unfair. Their parents were drug addicts. They were, put in the foster system and then they started dealing drugs and they ended up in prison and they got a 20-year sentence. Like, where's the help for this person? And when you share those stories and how hard they're trying to overcome those challenges, it humanizes them and that changes the system because people out here are connected to people in there. But I think there's a lot of men coming out that have changed their life. Like I've done podcasts with them and I have friends and they're just like, when I stood in that courtroom, my whole life changed. But some of them, it was like their third or fourth prison trip too. He's like, I did, 5 trips to state, but when I stood in front of the feds, that's when I knew. He's like, I told the judge, send me to prison and let's just get this over with. He's like, I don't want to mess around. And so, but whatever it took is what it took. And I've gotten better at not expecting people to figure it all out on the first trip. I work in drug treatment. It might take them 3 or 4 times and you love them. And then one day they get it and you're so happy when they do. If it's trip number 3, if it's trip number 1, same with people in prison. It might take them 3 trips to figure it out. I'm grateful I got a lengthy sentence. 1 year, I would have been cocky and arrogant. I would have gotten out and thought I'm on top of the world. I got 7 years and that sobered me up, scared me to death and just devastated me being separated from my children. And that pain is the foundation of the life I built today.
But you spent how long? 4.5?
4.5. I did a year in a treatment program that's hardcore. Like no treatment out here compares to it. And then I served in that program as well. And then I got good time and I got to come home early on through a halfway house. So on a 7-year sentence, I did almost 5 because they had me do some county time too. So pretty close to 5 years is what I did.
In the beginning of your book, there was a really cool quote that it was about the person who has fallen and repented versus a person who's never really struggled. Do you remember that? You remember what that
Mm,
quote is?
I was trying to remember because I'm thinking like there's the mental breakdown, which that quote is. I know what that quote is because I remember it.
Well, I'll kind of summarize because I've said this before to other people. I'm like, I've never had an I've never had an addiction. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe 6 months to addiction to Mountain Dew. That's nothing. I
Hey.
don't know what that's like,
Yeah.
but I've, just friends that I have had that have struggled and fallen and been at the darkest places like you're talking about and
Uh-huh.
come back one or two
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
That's we get way more points for that, I think, than just existing because you're
You know,
falling and trying and falling and getting back up.
yeah. Oh, I think it takes a lot to come back. Um, at this point in my life, I think I would rather die than relapse on drugs because I don't have the energy to climb out of those dark holes anymore, you know? Um, but I believe in people. I think there's always hope. And I think sometimes we get in the way of people suffering because suffering is where you build a new life. It's that pain that drives the change. I absolutely believe that people that, I've seen people fall down and suffer in ways you can't imagine and come back from that. And it's amazing to me. There's a lot of people that don't make it back. I just buried one of my friends who had come back from it and then relapsed. And when you come back from a really dark place and you go back into that dark place, that can swallow you right up. It's terrifying. Um, I think that the downtrodden, those who have suffered in ways that I've learned being in prison, are heroes. They're heroes to keep going day after day and keep fighting this fight that where the odds are stacked against you. I I think when I got to prison, I didn't realize how judgmental I was. Being raised in the church, even though I was kind of an outlier, I still had a lot of judgments when I thought, well, they're bad, I'm good. They say the F word all the time. I don't. I was so wrong. I
Is
was
yes,
so wrong.
don't judge me because we sin differently.
Yeah, but on top of that, I had all the advantages. My parents weren't drug addicted. My parents didn't leave me at someone's house, foster care, and never come back for me. My parents didn't lose me to the system. Why would I think that my lack of integrity was any less than their drug dealing? I mean, how could I possibly think that way when I had all the advantages and made the mistakes I did? And yet they came from the hardest circumstances and were trying to rise above it. So I started to realize how foolish I had been to see the world the way I had. And it's so different than what I thought. We don't all start in the same place. And
Because
yeah,
you could say you could look at you knew better,
I was the
whereas
worst, right?
they
Yeah,
didn't know any better. That
exactly.
was all they knew. So
Right.
shame
I'm
on
more
you,
culpable.
right? Yeah,
Right.
kind of
So it,
right.
it shifted for me over time. But to start with, I thought, oh, I'm so much better because I don't act like that. Wrong. Over time, I came to realize how wrong my thinking was. And now I'm just honored to stand with the people that I met in prison. I would never try to expunge my crime or anything like that because I am super proud and honored to stand with such brave people for sure. So
I don't know if I want to wrap it up, but what if someone remembers nothing else of what we said? What's your greatest takeaway from this experience? And
oh
then how to
yeah.
apply it, and like to people that may never go down that road, but that they can
Yeah.
use the principles you've learned to better their worlds.
I think that um, what I would tell somebody that maybe hasn't had this experience, whatever hard thing you're facing, there is something so beautiful on the other side of it. You can't see it yet, but walking through this hard thing will change everything. Don't be afraid. Don't ever give up. The best part of your life is still ahead of you. I think I would tell people that honesty is complete power. Don't give away your power by making excuses. Just own it. Free yourself. Whatever it is. If you're late for something, just say, I'm late. I'm sorry. But don't try to make an excuse because it's the weakest way out. Um, I think I would say, give yourself some grace and give everyone else some grace too, because we're all human and every one of us suffers. And we're a lot more alike than we are different. It doesn't matter where you live or who you are or what your experiences are. Every one of us is human and has suffered loss and will continue to, and you just don't know. And be patient because it's a long game. Life and eternity is a long game. If I could have imagined my life the way it is now when I was 16 or when I was 21 or the day I stood in that courtroom, I couldn't imagine a life this beautiful. And I've been through a lot of really hard things. And I think the best is still yet to come. It's a long game. And all of those hard things happened. And yet the beauty of my life is true too. It can all be true, the hard stuff and the beauty. So just accept it all and know it's not over. It just isn't over. No matter how dark it seems or where you're at or what mistakes you've made, there is beauty through it on the other side. So
It's a huge dose of contrast therapy you've been through.
yeah,
Really.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
And just growing through, because everybody has something.
yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
care who you are. And in our culture, for those that don't know about the LDS culture, we can tend to be a bit judgmental and keeping up with the Joneses. I've only been in the church half my life, but I've seen that the devil, man, he gets in there and, oh, do you see what they have? Yeah, you should be like them. And oh, their life is perfect because they show up to church and everybody's not fighting or some silly, fill in the blank, whatever excuse it is.
Yeah.
And it's so dumb, but Satan, that's one of his greatest tools. She's so perfect. She has it all together, like you.
Not me.
Thought other
Absolutely
people were. You
That's what I used to
other
think,
people in
right?
your ward would probably think, wow, they've got it. They've got everything.
Yeah. Well, I make it super clear. Mine's really easy to see. It's not. And I think that that's something very cool that I can do because my sins are, really easy to see. And if I have a beautiful life after all that, then anyone can. Like, let's just give ourselves some grace, and we're just gonna make some mistakes. We're all kind of on the same boat that way. So
Yeah, and being more alike than we are different, and that's something I'm trying to be an example of and teach through what I do here. And just, hey, just talk to people, get to know each other for the sake of just getting to know them.
Absolutely.
To understand that. Well, that's I think this is a great place we can land the plane, as Mike Rowe says on his podcast. But
so enjoyable.
I appreciate you sharing this. This has been fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could go on and on and on. And good luck with your TED Talk that's coming up.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, that's way cool. Yeah, that's very cool. I'm gonna be on that stage one day with
that's right.
Something I've been working on for a while, but
very cool.
So that's cool. Yeah. So your story's great and blah blah.
I imagine
blah.
our paths will cross again. So
well, it's funny that I saw you there. That night. I'm like, where do I know that woman from? And it hit me afterwards. I'm like, oh. But anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate this, and we'll catch you on another one, hopefully. Thank you again for listening to the Parish to Thought Show. We would love your comments and feedback on our website at briankeithparish.com/feedback. If you love or hate what you hear, please give us a rating on whatever platform you find us. You're still here? Click on the next episode for more from the Parish to Thought Show.